do think that you can continue with this nonsense. I also think that a lot of people actually just want to say it. They want to say it on social media. I'm not sure they're even following what they're saying, because everything is about this kind of emotional reaction. I think these are dopamine hits for a lot of people, depending what kind of reaction they're getting. So it's all, I think, jumbled up in this big ball of, I don't know, nonsense, I think. And it's with social media. And sometimes I honestly feel like the best thing that could happen is for social media to go dark. I mean, absolutely dark. Maybe some people would probably go insane, fine. But I think, because I think this is unsustainable in many ways, this kind of life.
Yeah. And the thing I find interesting is something I haven't fully articulated, but that I've been thinking about, is that, that there was some idea of technocracy that I might have had before, that it was kind of sustained by this kind of cold, detached, analytical framework. But what we have today is this kind of technocratic sensibility, which is, basically driven by the idea that we need to regulate all of human existence around the control of pathogens and things like that, and that essentially we need to let epidemiologists control the entire functioning of society, but who aren't so much cold and detached as they're fueled by this kind of fanatical idea that they're the protectors of life, and that they're the only thing standing between us and just complete death and destruction. So it's this very odd. And so I often see that they, when they talk about this, they have this very binary thing where it's they can't think of COVID as a thing that you will not necessarily get, and that if you get it will, in most cases, not be all that severe, right? They have to think of it as this thing that will kill everyone. They talk about it as this thing that everyone will get and that will kill everyone, unless. And so it comes back to this kind of apocalyptic sensibility where they're driven by this kind of apocalyptic fervor that if we don't just give up all control to this crazy kind of ad hoc dictatorial system, then it'll just be death and mayhem all around. And so it's this technocracy of kind of fear, as well as of fear and sort of fanaticism, and also this kind of performance of moral concern.
It's strange. That reminds me of the politics of it all. A kind of inverted Catholic right to life stance around keeping someone in a vegetative state. That might seem weird. Let me explain. So if someone is on life support, it's the traditionalist Catholic who might make the argument that you can't pull the plug. Any life lived, no matter the quality, is vital. In a strange way, the COVID fanatics, the COVID lockdown fanatics, are saying something like, keeping all life around, no matter the quality. We're stuck in our homes all the time. We can't see each other, whatever. Things aren't actually quite that dire, but if they were, it might make the case that it's still worth it to save a life. So I sort of tied into that in that angle. So quality of life does matter. So even if the COVIDians had a point that some lives might be saved, that's not really getting at the entire picture of what it's like to be alive.
No, and I don't think they're interested in either. I really think a lot of it has to do with I'm sometimes finding that a lot of people who are proponents of this are often immunocompromised themselves. They reveal that much later. And sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's just somebody wanting to talk because they have no meaning in life. I really think that it does come down to that as well. Because if you have a kind of purpose that you're moving towards, but not only that it's based on your relation with other people, then I think you would want to get out of this as fast as possible, right? You would welcome the good news if it's coming. But every single time, for example, when CDC, unfortunately for them, right, said that you don't have to wear masks if you are vaccinated, right? That was that in April or May, something like that. I don't remember exactly, right?
Yeah.
Maybe even later, right? And I've seen people on Facebook. They've been following CDC like a law, right? Absolutely, like it's a god. Then CDC said this, and then immediately they said, "Oh no, this can't be right. They're destroying everybody. Everybody will die. Everybody, like you said, Geoff, everybody will die, right?" So that tells you something, that the God that's in their mind is made in their own image, right? And it's made not only in their own image, but in their own phobias image, actually, because I do think that these are phobias. And I'm wondering how it even occurred, because I think the only society that can develop these kinds of phobias is a society that's extremely comfortable, a society that's very prosperous, that can sort of come up with problems, right? And then I'm somehow not happy in life, or I'm somehow restless, but instead of asking interior questions as to why I'm restless, I sort of unleash some of this onto the external world, which is, I think, what's going on here with COVIDians. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've been using or thinking about this metaphor of like autoimmune conditions. I mean, I'm kind of interested because like I actually had an autoimmune condition. But this idea that what's that?
Like an autoimmune condition?
Oh, so an autoimmune condition is like when the immune system attacks some part of your own body, like one of your own organs. And so what's interesting about it is the way that overactivated immunity can become self-destructive, that sort of it starts to destroy the thing that it is supposed to protect. And so I'm kind of interested in how there are all of these kind of extreme cultural extremes that seem to represent something like this metaphor where, the protective action becomes destructive of the very thing it's supposed to protect.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's interesting that I mean, I don't know how fully the metaphor works in this case, but, it does seem like at least in some other countries, it was clear that that even that's varied and has shifted in certain places, I think, but like, it was clear that the goal of the extreme protective actions taken was to protect the possibility of continuing with life as we know it, right? Whereas the function of these protective measures has actually been to, and seems to be at this point, explicitly to destroy many of the things that would be worth protecting in the first place.
Right.
I remember right around, it was around April or May of this year where the CDC stance became the middle ground, when it was like the edge of the progressive or left position.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, get vaccinated and you'll be all right. And then the people in the hard blue cities wanted to continue with masks and social distancing and lockdowns. They became, the outer progressive edge, and the CDC was in this middle ground position. But since then, the CDC has begun to kind of move itself in the direction of the hard blue cities, I think. And so, talking about breakthrough cases and maybe not just talking about it, I mean, they do exist, but possibly exaggerating the frequency with which they happen. I haven't followed it super closely, but the CDC does, or big science, as it were, does seem to be now kind of where like San Francisco is, where for a while San Francisco was on the outer edge of the left, big science was kind of in the center, and then you had Texas on the right, But yeah, there was actually a Star Trek Next Generation episode getting at this autoimmune condition where or a scenario where they had genetically engineered like the healthiest people who ever existed. So they like a bunch of kids ranging from 5 or 6 to 14. They were in this kind of protective bubble, and anyone who came into contact with them got sick because they were so incredibly healthy that their immune system went beyond defending their own health and started going on the offense and started making other people. So it's kind of interesting, the autoimmune thing. I can't map that onto COVID exactly, but it reminded me of that.
No, and there's so much misinformation. I think that I've sort of even stopped reading everything about COVID from a scientific perspective. I mean, there are a few people I still read, and also depending the sources that they come out of. But every time Twitter or Facebook gives you a little warning, I go, well, I'm going to read that. Because we know what that means. There might be some truth in that of what, or usually it is true when they're trying to suppress it. So contributing to that, I think it's a how do you get out of this mess? I guess that's really, my question right now. Is this ever going to stop? Or when it stops, what's going to be the damage, And right now I see it especially with kids and masks. Yeah. And there's no other country, I don't think, that is actually doing this. And I've spoken to a lot of family and friends in European countries. I also have some friends in Australia and some family there. And some countries obviously were more relaxed about the restrictions. Others were in lockdowns, but almost all of them did not have kids and did not have kids wear masks.
Even Australia?
Even Australia. I have a friend who has 2 kids, and when I told her what's going on here about masks and children, she's just in disbelief. She's like, what do you mean kids have to wear masks? I don't understand. And I get this a lot from family and friends in Europe. And I think I'm still trying to understand, like, what's going through the administration or regime's mind, really, to impose this on children. It's a very strange form of collectivism and authoritarianism, because you're effectively creating, also, again, I'm looking always to the long term, right? So you're creating a society that has no future, that has no hope, no joy, and you're essentially just stealing childhood from these kids. So this is very sadistic, actually.
Yeah, it's dystopian. And I mean, the other thing I've noticed that's interesting is that, that's at this point, that's become the moderate position, because you have these other people who want everything to be remote for, under 12s until they're all vaccinated, which is complete madness. But
it is.
And that seems to be, as far as I can tell, the left. Like, I see sort of socialists and people like that. Mm-hmm. That's the position they're taking now, that it's irresponsible for sort of centrist Democrats. I mean, one thing I've been interested to see, as somebody who's sort of disillusioned with, like, the socialist left, but had some vague affiliation with them at some point. I mean, they're some of the worst, like the sort of dirtbag leftist and socialist type people. Like, they are some of the worst COVIDians of all, because they seem to see it as this way they can berate centrist Democrats for doing the kind of middle of the road positions. And so one example of this that I find incredible is that, I mean, I was, when I was more of a leftist, like 10 years ago, I was involved in campaigns to, like, prevent expansion of online education in certain contexts, because it was clearly a sort of, I mean, at that time, like 10 years ago, there was a lot of push from the Obama administration, from various foundations and things, and from various Silicon Valley corporations for more online education. And it was clearly a kind of privatization and sort of a way of trying to create this huge market for corporations that wanted to sell educational software, and also to gradually privatize a lot of public education, right? So, I mean, I was involved in, like, trying to fight against that stuff 10 years ago, right? Now it is the left, as far as I can tell, that is most aggressively demanding that all education be online for as long as possible. So they have come around to the position that, Google, Apple, Facebook, the education reform sort of quote unquote neoliberals of the Obama administration, like they've come around to exactly that position, that the future of education is all online, but they've come around to it on the premise that it's just not safe. And so,
right.
So it's very bizarre to see, because
I guess if I were trying to defend them, they would push back on the we want Google or Apple to be the ones in charge of this transition to remote, buying their products, obtaining their consultancy services or whatever. They would like to see. It's somewhat in the same way they'd like to see, some of them would like to see more housing built, but just have the government directly do it or something. They don't want private developers to gain. They would like to move to remote, but not have like this kind of this middleman of big tech involved. I don't know how tenable that really is.
Good luck. I mean, if it's an emergency thing, you're going to use what's available, and what's available is what's, who's going to swoop in and offer that. So, I think it's really, it's very revealing of what's.
Well, a lot of the socialist left, which I've only you've been involved in that much longer than I have, but the whole notion of the exhaustion of political possibility and that kind of thing. I mean, you do have to admit that making everyone wear masks and moving to remote would be a radical departure from how things have been. Mainly the mask, though, because the remote things were already trending in that direction anyway, right? But they wanted this but the mask thing really would be a whole new presence in.
Oh yeah, no, I think
Yeah, no, I actually think that we end up always doing this. Seems to be a human nature thing where we hold on to one form of doing something, and then we think we can apply it to everything else. And I'll give you an example. Like when I was getting my PhD, I was also obviously teaching, and so during that time, I got pregnant, and I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? Once I give birth, how will I teach? And because I'm in the PhD program, there is no such thing as maternity or anything like that. So I negotiated with the directors of the program, whatever, to do an online course for that semester. Semester started, I think, on the same day I gave birth to my son. So, but I was able to, for that semester, I was able to teach online. It was an online course, right? And it was really great that I was able to do that, right? But it's a one-time thing, right? It's something that can be only used when you really absolutely need to. But I think the idea to actually take this form of online learning and just apply it completely to everything else, it tells me also that the teachers might be lazy. Some of the teachers really are. They don't want to do the work. And then when something goes wrong, they blame the parents. And at that point, I think the parents should simply homeschool, because you should be working off of your own curriculum. Otherwise, you have some bossy teacher telling you that you're not doing something right, when in reality, the whole thing is such a mess, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too stereotypical, and I know the types of people that go into K through 12 education, and they're kind of like the middlebrow intellectual, kind of like myself, and kind of introverted, and would really rather not have to be around a lot of people face to face all the time. And this is their opportunity to seize that and try to continue working from home. So yeah,
yeah.
Well, I understand that. I understand sometimes, some people are more introverted, some are extroverted. That's just normal, right? But I think, again, these things which should require, human contact, I think that's where we're going too far. And I mean, imagine this. Let's say you go to Harvard. What is a tuition now? I don't even know at Harvard. Is it like 60,000 or something per year? Probably. Let's say it is. Yeah. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's a lot of money, right?
That's about that. Yeah.
That seems about maybe between 50 and 70. So for an undergraduate degree, so you're there and you're taking classes online for 50, 60,000 a year. You kidding me? I mean, no, absolutely not. If I'm going to get ideology, then I might as well get ideology in person, right? As opposed to sitting behind the computer. So at least put me in a nice building, right? On campus.
Yeah, something like Harvard, there is definitely a lot to be gained by just even putting aside being able to speak to people face to face, just being on the campus itself. I mean, that's your opportunity to, put a photo on social media or something and check in someplace, right? Of course, you can always check in from somewhere, even if you're not there. But
it's true.
But but for places that are less than that, less than a Harvard level prestige, I don't know if as much is gained by being there in person, except for the things that just make that are not directly related to your career ambitions, but just part of what make life worth living. Actually just base level of sociality with other human beings, right?
Well, I mean, I'm sort of even though I work for one, I hope that this whole affair does weaken the stature of various elite universities and and sort of undermine their abilities. I mean, it's unlikely. I think what maybe will happen is just more of a siloing and sorting and an open. I mean, which is already to some extent underway, but kind of opening up of different paths, because I think, you know, the sort of monopoly of credentialism in these kind of contexts, you know, it was already a huge problem, and I think it's you know, even though the way it's happening is bad, it's kind of good that this that this whole period is revealed. I mean, a lot of these universities, you know, they basically pocketed tuition money and then sort of went remote as soon as they had all the money in the bank. You know, it's just unbelievably corrupt. Like,
it was, yeah.
No, but
so I hope that there is kind of a questioning of what these universities are offering beyond just credentials.
Absolutely.
And to be more critical about
the whole political economy of this. I am not so sure it's really in their interest to continue with kind of pro lockdown-ish politics, because don't they rely on a lot of foreign students being there in person, paying full price?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
No, but then I also haven't been able to wrap my head around teachers' unions seemingly shooting themselves in the foot by not you know, appreciating the threat of online education. You discussed earlier, and that website, The Bellows, was all over last year too as well.
Yeah.
Right.
So trying to infer a certain level of self-interest, material self-interest, has gotten really murky. It's more difficult because it's not always clear why people behave that way. It doesn't, even when it seems like it's in their material interest, yet they go against that. It's odd.
Right. And the schools have been, you know, higher ed has been in deep trouble for a long time now, ideologically speaking, and academia is such a strange place. You know, I have 5 degrees, and I can tell you that, you know, you start to change actually, because if you're not a complete leftist, I'm not even like I'm not, you know, I don't even consider myself some hardline conservative. I really am not. It's kind of more libertarian, in the vein of libertarianism, I guess.
Not really a
but
big...
God forbid, and God forbid if you step away from their line that they have. And I've had friends actually over there who are not exactly a conservative either, but they're not according to what academia is at that point, right? So it's a very collectivist society, if you will, and they are very ideologically driven. There's really not a lot of academic or free thinking. So in any case, to go off of what you said, Geoff, I think maybe this will actually cleanse it in a way. Maybe people will stop going to school. Humanities are in deep trouble. So I mean, I would say if you want to go to school, you go to school for a professional degree, because you won't even get humanities in school. Actually, you'll get ideology. You know, and these people haven't even read Marx. I think that's what bothers me. Actually, they have some pseudo Marxist stuff that they're spewing, and I guarantee you they haven't even read Marx. That's the sad part in all of this.
Is it even Marxist? I don't even know. I mean.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a struggle. There's always a struggle. Some kind of, if it's not a class struggle, then it's a different kind of struggle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess I don't mind talking to an honest Marxist. That's not the point, or an honest atheist, or whatever. Somebody who has intellectually come to this conclusion. That's I've always said this to my students too. You know, if you absolutely stand by those principles of Marxism, then you give me argument for it. But just to sort of, you know, have these very elusive, everything is just a simple talking point. I think that's what bothers me, that there's no intellectual integrity in what you're trying to defend, right? Or not, in any case.
Yeah, and it's I mean, it's an absolute ideological monoculture, no question. It's and I think, you know, I'll be interested. I mean, I'm actually going back to teaching in person this semester, and I think, you know, there are ways that whatever my heresies are have been able to fly under the radar for a while. But I think being back in person in the COVID era is going to be a little bit different, just because it's become, you know, I think because of what I was saying before, the kind of fever pitch intensity of the whole thing, and the way that these sort of progressive dogmas now include just this continuation of this extremely bleak dystopian existence, which, you know, and I don't know how that's, you know, I don't know what that's going to be like for the students, but, you know, I don't know what it will take to persuade people that, you know, it's not literal murder to, you know, like imagine a world in which we can kind of more or less exist as we did before.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What do you teach, Geoff, if you don't mind me asking?
I teach sort of writing, mostly writing and humanities type stuff. So, yeah, but mostly early, you know, sort of first and second year undergrad.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Classes.
Yeah.
You're doing it remotely, or has
I'm going back in. It has been, but I'm going back in person. So, we shall see.
Yeah, you know, because I've been trying to figure out just like where. Not so much universities, but corporate America is. Are they generally, or like, in general, pushing back this in-person work situation, or are they, you know, clamoring for return to office? I mean, there's been some big names like Apple and like Charles Schwab or something that pushed it back to 2022 at some point. But I think in general, they are trying to get people back in definitely before the end of the year. I'm probably going to be back in office next month.
Yeah.
So they're quietly doing that, despite, you know, the kind of ongoing half dystopia, you know, execution of this new situation. I say half dystopia because, yeah, there's a lot of the mask mandates are still in effect. There's been undermining of the efficacy of the vaccine, like in the popular discussion. But people are still going out. They're just wearing masks. They're going out a lot more. And I mean, just street traffic is all completely returned to normal. Freeway traffic.
Yeah.
That's people are basically living as if it's February of 2020, but with masks on.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah. You know, which sort of that I think people in time can get used to it, and so it doesn't really feel dystopian. And it just goes to how much people can really contend with, how much they can really put up with. I mean, we put up with so much worse in the past. I mean, what if we just wear masks basically all the time going forward? In a few years, it won't feel dystopian anymore. It'll just be normal. And
no.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm too old now. Maybe I'm over the hump now. So, but I mean, if you're 14, how dystopian does it really feel? Maybe there's a couple of years where you're annoyed by it, but then by the time you're 35, you don't think back on your 20s and think, oh man, I missed all this stuff that previous generations got, because they're comparing themselves to their cohorts. It's hard to say.
Well, it's not my society, I can tell you that. I mean, I think that would have such a, you know, the essence of human encounter is face, actually. So I think that's the, even just from a philosophical perspective, you know, I think that to deny that, you know, incredible individuality, obviously, and authenticity of human face, particularly in children, but in anybody really, is morally reprehensible to me, you know, and to treat us like ciphers, and it's dehumanizing. So I'm certainly hoping that something like this will not continue.
And it's dehumanizing for basically nothing, because there's like literally no good evidence that mandates work. So
yeah, I mean, even like kind of anti-humanistic, very conservative Islam doesn't do this. It's actually the inverse of this. Everything except the face is covered, right? I mean, unless
certain factions,
extreme burqas and so on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, even like the typical conservative country is not covering people up in this way. You can see their face.
Right.
Face.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, I guess it's been about an hour now, so we got started a little late. That's why I went past 3 a little bit, but
it's okay.
All right.
I was curious if either of you have seen the film Pig.
You know what?
No, I haven't.
No, but
have you?
that.
Yeah, I just saw it.
There's about 4 hours left on that rental, so I should watch it right after this.
Yeah, no, you really should. It's great, and it kind of loops back a little bit to the earlier films we discussed, in that it is about a guy who's completely cut himself off from the world, and then it's kind of about him returning to the world that he left, and it's extremely good. I mean, I generally like Nicolas Cage, and I think his performance is fantastic in this, and.
Yeah,
it's a
over the last 10 years,
sure.
especially. Yeah. It's really weird. Like, he's done a lot of really, really bad stuff, but then like every fifth film will just be great, you know.
Yeah, no, this one I really loved it and strongly recommend it, and would be interested to hear what both of you think about it. Cool. So
yeah, I noticed it got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is not to just appeal to authority, but that means something. So
yeah,
is it in the theaters or?
It is. Yeah, it is in the theaters and streaming at the moment. So you can see it
where is it streaming? Do you know? I'll check
I think
it out. I'll find it.
Yeah, I think I just got it from, Apple. Whatever that.
Okay.
I think you can get it on Apple or Amazon or
Apple
Google Play.
TV or something. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'll check that out.
Sounds good.
I've got until about 9 p.m. or something like that, my time.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Cool. All right. Well, it's nice talking to you two.
A pleasure.
Thank you so much.